Good evening, social media world. Welcome to the Rethink Your Health podcast. I'm Tanya Abreu, and this is our 45th podcast. It is a very exciting endeavor that I've taken on in life, and it's really an extension of more than 30 years of being um, a consumer health advocate, as well as an advisor to U.S. hospitals and physician practices on how to really understand what consumers want. And, I've been watching and watching over the past very painful 4 years, building up to COVID, and now our kind of downswing from COVID. And I've watched more and more as the healthcare system begins to crack under the pressure, economic pressure, programmatic pressure, nurses leaving the profession, doctors retiring early. I've watched all of a sudden people are saying, what do consumers want? Now, I've been dealing with this for 3 decades. And the answer that seems to be emerging over and over again, whether you're following different groups on Facebook, or you're on LinkedIn chats, or you're reading the news, are two things. One, mental health institutionalizations have increased 50% since COVID started. Institutionalizations. Now, that is when mental health and stress is so bad that you cannot function in your normal world, and you need to go to a place to get intense help to rebalance yourself. That's a really scary moment. And that's increased 50%. Teenage suicide, 200%. Requests for antidepressants up, it's over 100% than 3 years ago. I don't remember what the exact figure is. Just Google it. It is a world, and especially a nation, full of people under unbearable loads of stress. What comes with unbearable loads of stress is the second biggest complaint that consumers have right now in the healthcare system: pain. I am in chronic pain. My pain is worse. Things feel worse. My body is failing me. My arthritis since COVID is 5 times worse than it ever was. I need a walker now. The stories that I hear daily are so ultimately full of misery and full of despair that I am so committed to rethink your health in helping people that are in stress and in pain, which seems so closely linked, feel better. Rethink Your Health went live just a few days ago, www.rethinkyourhealth.com. If you're not signed up to be on a do this right now and feel better kind of chain of communication, please do. Make sure you put rethink and then yourhealth.com, www.rethinkyourhealth.com. I'll put it up later. And join us on this amazing journey to what I want to be effective, healthy change in your life that's fun, not guilty, stress less, and pain-free. About 5 years ago, I was doing some research on solving the pain crisis and the opioid crisis in the United States. And I came across the name of a woman who is a PhD neuroscientist that at the time, slightly before the time that I reached out to her, had been the assistant director of the integrative health program at Henry Ford healthcare system, one of the biggest and finest in our country. She was doing research on all kinds of patients, but in particularly really focusing on factory workers and how chronic pain not just ruined their lives, but ruined their economic survival. And her research that I started to read just blew me away. It blew me away because the testimonials and the research didn't just say, oh, I felt a lot better and I needed a whole lot less ibuprofen. It said, I don't feel any pain anymore in my back. I don't have to wear my belts. I don't have to, use a cane to get up in the morning and stretch. It was amazing. I reached out to her and I asked her if she would speak at the last conference I curated before COVID, which was the future of women's health. That has been a friendship and a colleague that has changed my life. And tonight, she is here to launch a new commitment to America, to go viral, to go online, to help those of you that are addicted to painkillers, those of you who are drinking away stress and pain, not to feel guilty about it, not to do something that's going to take you so much agony to get through, but to solve the problem through her and her partner's technique that they've had for decades called somatic functional therapy. Time is now, and I want you to meet this amazing woman. Her name is Dr. Alba Rodriguez, and I'm going to bring her up on the screen, and we are going to welcome her.
Hello.
Alba, greetings.
Hello, Tanya. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And hello to everyone out there watching us, either live or coming up soon here when the reruns come up.
Yeah. No, it's all good. We have got 6, and just so people know, we're streaming on 6 platforms right now, but then we are on Buzzsprout, we're on Apple, we are on Spotify, all the major channels. So all you need to do is look up Rethink Your Health. And if you go ahead and log on and sign up for Rethink Your Health, you'll get notifications anytime there's a new podcast like tonight. So welcome. Let me go ahead and put that up. All right. So Dr. Alba, give us a sense of why this renewed commitment to going viral with somatic functional therapy. You've had decades of research. You've helped, it's over 50,000 people, I believe. It's an amazing achievement. You should be retiring, but instead you're made this new commitment to kind of digitalizing what you do to reach, hopefully, millions.
Yes. Well, I've been working with Dr. Nunez for about 18 years or so. And he started this work decades ago and has personally treated about 50,000 patients. And I had the privilege of meeting him when I was working at Henry Ford Health System, where I was the associate director of the Center for Integrative Wellness that they had just opened. It was like the first integrative health center within a major hospital. And he was the lead physician there. And after about a decade of work there doing research on somatic functional therapy, and we can talk a little bit more about what that is, one of the things we were doing was we had done some work with one of the major Fortune 100 corporations, and they were so impressed that they said, "Oh, we love what you're doing, but we need to be able to get this to all our 50,000 employees. And some of them are all over the world. How can we possibly do that?" And at the time, we were doing everything in person. And we were like, "Well, I don't know." And they were like, "Well, we'll put you on our plane and we'll fly you around everywhere," which sounds great for the first 2 weeks, right? But it's not a sustainable way to do things. And so we started thinking, how can we impact the most number of people and really get this out there? Because, we were only working in Michigan at the time, and we wanted to be able to offer this research-proven, evidence-based programs that really were shown to not only, like you said, improve pain, but to resolve it, but also to improve and resolve a lot of stress-related conditions that, we all know the stress and the pain go hand in hand, and all those chronic illnesses, they're all intimately related. And so, we started thinking back then, well, the only way to do that is via the internet. We have to be able to go online. And, when COVID came around, we had some programs that we were going to be working with nurses in person, and all of that got shut down, and the hospitals couldn't do anything. So that's where that really gave us the push to go to offer some things virtually, to offer some things that anywhere.
It's funny, it got shut down just when it was needed most, right?
Exactly.
just when it was needed
And
most.
like you said, the pandemic and the reaction to the pandemic have caused this inordinate amount of stress. All of those things that you mentioned, plus so many more,
Hmm.
due to the stress, the problems with the stress, and so then we're all isolated, and in so many states, people were even more isolated. And thankfully, in Florida, we had a little bit more freedom to get around. But in a lot of states, people just did not have.
Yeah, New York City was amazing. New York City people were on lockdown. The amount of issues, the amount of rage violence, stress violence. I mean, it was, and it continues to be. It's PTSD, right? Being
Absolutely.
alone, being terrified of a disease, being terrified of dying from a disease is really traumatic. I don't want anyone to think that we're saying your pain is all in your head, right? Because that just doesn't, because as somebody who you've helped, right? Between my Must Natural, my Muscadine, my antioxidants, and somatic functional therapy, I have now avoided. I can't remember what it's called now. It's back surgery to fuse my lower lumbar together because of excruciating pain for nearly 2 years. So it works. And but when somebody first told me, it's really linked to stress, I would roll my eyes and say, wow, that's really condescending. This is real. I can show you my MRI. But the issue is, and I've learned from you over the years, that pain occurs in the brain. And the only way the brain knows to tell you you're in pain is if the muscles tighten up, press against a nerve, and sends a signal to the brain. And that pathway gets worn over and over again. So I have bad knees from osteoarthritis. There's a pathway from the tight muscles around my knee that gets right up to my brain and says, ouch, don't even try to climb into that truck. Don't try to do this. But then I've learned, my goodness, I stress out. I'm under stress even before I try. And so now I've learned to relax before I use or do something that used to cause pain. Talk to us, define for us what somatic functional therapy is in a nutshell. And I know you brought a presentation, so we'll do that a little bit. But before we do that, give us the elevator speech.
The elevator speech. Well, just like you're saying, um, the brain is really important with any kind of pain, and we think of somatic functional therapy as a therapeutic, an educational therapeutic system for addressing the neuropsychophysical responses or effects of stress. So what does that mean, right? It is in your head. It's also in your body, but guess what? The two are very well connected, right? There's none of us are just floating heads walking around, right? We all have our brain and we have our body, and there's constant signals going back and forth. So what is that? When we are under stress, and whether that's physical, real stress, trauma, emotional stress, imagined stress, perceived stress, whatever type of stress it is, any organism, including us humans, reacts in certain ways. And we know that we've all heard of the stress response, right? Fight, flight, and now freeze. We all know about that. But there's very specific things that happen in your brain, in your body, in your mind that occur when you're under stress and how the body responds to that. And so what we do with somatic functional therapy, and somatic just means your experience of your body from the inside, like how you experience yourself, right? And functional means it's not about other stuff out there. It's how we move, how we function, how we exist in the world. And so what we teach in somatic functional therapy, because it is an educational system, is how to intervene at the level of the stress response. What can you do when you're under stress, any kind of stress? What can you do in a moment, in a few minutes, every day to stop those effects, those downstream effects of that stress response that lead to the pain, that lead to anxiety, that lead to depression, that lead to all of these negative chronic illnesses that we know of as stress-related chronic illness. And so that's what we're doing. We're teaching, it's an educational system, and it's therapeutic. So when you learn how to do these things, you learn to stop that response and regain control of your body, regain control of your muscles. So it's not just a reflex anymore. You're not just running around tense and tight and guarding all the time, but you learn to control your body again. You learn to go back to that neutral state.
So this isn't like woo woo. We don't have to believe in like energy patterns and all of that, which I kind of do believe in anyhow. But this is really based on science,
It's just,
demonstrated by research.
yeah,
Okay.
science. It's just how the body works. We don't
Mhm.
rely on any woo woo stuff. We don't rely on, it's all, this is your body. It's all, all the science is there. And actually, a lot of it is catching up now because there's a lot of things that we were doing that studies come out every day saying, oh, wow, this really verifies what we've been talking about and what Dr. Nunez has been talking about for, 40 years. And so it is, it's very science-based, but even better than that, the science is great. I'm a scientist. That's important to me, right? I'm all about the research. But what I hear most from people that learn this is, wow, this makes so much sense. Why didn't anybody ever teach me this? It just,
And it
it's so
does. I'm a
obvious.
layperson. And for you to teach me how to have my brain release muscles that have been held for like 10 years in pain, and how through just, I love it, micro movements that take just a few minutes at a time, I can get relief. Let me tell you guys that are watching, I met Dr. Nunez and Dr. Rodriguez at a little diner on the beach years ago, and we're sitting in there and we're talking, and I'm talking about how I might be able to help them, and you know Dr. Nunez said to me, Tanya, how long has your neck been bothering you like this? I'm like, what, how do you know my neck is a chronic source of discomfort? And because I think I sit pretty well, and it's like, I feel so bad for you, you're in chronic pain with it. I'm like, well, yes, I am. It's not really bothering me today. He said, oh, yes, it is. You're just used to it. You have trained your body through years to be used to holding all this stress in your neck. And I said, as a matter of fact, I get blinding migraines, just blinding migraines. And so, in literally less than a couple of minutes, Ramon, Dr. Nunez, taught me how to look gently in micro movements to my left, to my right, and I I swear to sacred truth, I was able to like unfreeze and able to look. And when I drove home, I could look and see behind me. And I hadn't been able to do that for years. I had been to physical therapy, all this stuff, and that just hurt, and I didn't want to go. And then let me tell you that I have not experienced, and I want to knock on everything, but I know it's science, one of those blinding light migraines, because anytime I feel my body getting back into that pattern, I remember my little micro movements, and they're so easy to do. I can do them in public. And no, yeah, maybe some people think I have a little tick, but it works. It works. Let's pull up your PowerPoint you brought, and take a little bit. But before I do that, listen, guys, if you're interested, on December the
7.
7th at 7 p.m., there's going to be a free webinar that's actually going to have, I'm sorry, he's an occupational medical doctor with a wonderful Polish last name, and I always butcher it.
His name is Dr. Slickowski, and we call him Dr. Slick because
Dr.
everybody
Slick?
else butchers it too. Yes.
Okay, so he's in occupational medicine, and he's a physician. And then, of course, the founder of somatic functional therapy, Dr. Nunez, will be on, and Dr. Rodriguez. And I will hopefully be there a little bit just to kind of navigate the group. But what's going to be most important is that it's going to be practical. We're going to answer questions. We're going to do some demonstrations. And that's really exciting. And that you can just go right now, sign up for the webinar, and they'll see you on December 7th.
And the cool thing is there's some interactive demonstrations. That means you get to join in and you get to experience a difference in that moment yourself.
Great. All right, so let's go and do this if we can get this up for us. And I'm going to share the screen. And I know this is a PDF, but let's just go and take a look at some of this, and please walk us through.
Sure. Let me just get my reading glasses on so I can see. It's really tiny on my screen. One of the things that we just discussed here, and these are old data from before the pandemic. So you can imagine these numbers are way higher now. But there was a study done that showed that more than 50% of people suffer from at least one stress-related condition, right? And that's at least one. Most people have 2, 3, that they're dealing with. And there was a study that was done from the American Psychological Association that the majority of Americans were living with moderate to high levels of stress. And they knew that it wasn't good for them, but they just didn't know what to do. They couldn't make the changes that were necessary. And we can also look at chronic pain. Like we said, those two things are intimately related. And over 50% of adults at the time, again, this is probably way higher now, live in chronic or recurrent pain. So how many of you sitting here watching today have some kind of chronic or recurring pain that you deal with? Maybe it's neck pain, maybe it's shoulder pain, back pain is a big one. Think about that. So at the time,
you are going to be doing your very first online 4-series get rid of your back pain thing, right?
Yes.
Okay, you'll talk.
And the great thing is that's based on those programs that we did as research studies. So we know that they work because they've been done over and over and over again with thousands of participants, patients, corporations, and we always get the results. Where the participants get the results, where they get huge amounts of stress resolution, pain resolution, stress resolution. I'll give you a quick little number here.
I was sorry, you got garbled. Can you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So when we were talking about stress and pain, and I'm going to tell you about this in just a minute, there was a really interesting result at a Chrysler program that we did, and I'm going to tell you right about that in just a second here. But this started out because we were awarded, we competed for and were awarded $1 million grant from the HMO to create a new pathway for chronic back pain. And because I'm a researcher, we didn't want to just put out a new pathway for treatment. We wanted to test it first. So we conducted a randomized controlled clinical trial, which you all know is the gold standard of research, comparing the physical therapy along with the standard of care. That's whatever it is people were having done through the health system for their chronic back pain. And we compared that with this everything but this kitchen sink kind of study group where they got everything. They got chiropractic, they got acupuncture, neuromuscular therapy, hypnotherapy, Feldenkrais movement re-education. It was really very time intensive, involved 5 different practitioners and dozens of hours. And then we had a third group, which we called our streamlined integrative care group, which was the somatic functional therapy. They included the somatic functional therapy. Mm-hmm. And what we found is that, well, there were people in all groups that, had some improvement, but when we looked at practitioner dozens of hours, that's weird. We're getting my double seems to be speaking too. But what we found was that what we all want, we don't want our pain to get a little better, right? Who says, oh, I just wish my pain was a tiny bit better. We want it to be resolved. And what we found was that when you're looking at chronic back pain resolution, physical therapy and the conventional care only got 5% of people out of pain. So you're paying all this money, you're spending all that time, and only 5% of people are getting out of pain. That's just not good enough. So that whole everything but the kitchen sink group, they got 16% of people out of back pain. Pretty good, right? 3 times as well. But a couple little massage therapists that we trained right out of school in some basic somatic functional therapy protocols, 25% of people in that group resolved completely their chronic back pain.
And then at Chrysler, you had a 55% resolution.
Now, this was interesting because that first study I told you about was hands-on. So these massage therapists actually, everybody worked hands-on, but we said, Well, that's not good enough because there's just not enough people trained to do this on hands-on. How can we expand if we want this to be a care pathway? How do we get it to more people? So we said, well, the way to do it, and Dr. Nunez had been doing group programs since like the 70s in stress management. And so we said, let's do some group programs. And the HMO agreed to add that to the study. And so we went to Chrysler, who was a great partner of ours at the time, with Henry Ford. And we said, well, do you guys have any kind of problem with pain? Oh, absolutely. Chronic back pain costs us a fortune, and so many people lose time and, because of chronic back pain. So we did a randomized controlled trial there, but this one was purely educational. So we had, 100 people in a group, and they learned what to do themselves. Nobody ever touched them. And the amazing thing about this was that 55% of people resolved their chronic back pain.
Yeah,
Zero
I resolved mine.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that with such pride. I mean, there are times when I'm under stress or when I've overdone it lifting, or I'm at the gym lifting, I'm benching like 100 pounds. And sometimes I hurt it a little. And then I just go relax it, do the lower lumbar series, maybe up my dose of my muscadine grape antioxidant, which really helps keep the inflammation down. But it's gone. I don't need the surgery. And I went back to the surgeon, and he did another MRI, and he said, I don't know what's going on. You've got some space, but that's because nothing is, inflamed. Keep doing it, because back surgery is awful, and most of the time you have problems.
Yeah. Well, and the nice thing of this, because it is educational, once you learn it, it's yours. So like you said, if you hurt yourself and feel yourself getting back into that, you know exactly what to do. And Tanya, the other thing that was significant about that clinical trial, that the people who were in the control group, guess what percentage of them got out of pain?
I don't know.
Zero. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's
crazy.
Yeah.
And you've worked with all these other people. So I really want, I don't want this to all be about your free webinar, right? And then I know that you'll be doing some very inexpensive, but total pain resolution workshops after that free webinar. But I know the webinar will be really helpful for people that want to get a little mini introduction that they can try in their own life. But you've done this for a lifetime, and it's extraordinary that we can now do mastermind classes, right? That can pull together literally thousands of participants, at one time. So here's our summary of research results, which is great.
So yeah, over 2,300 people participated in these educational programs, and not only was chronic back pain resolved or significantly improved, all other conditions. We had nearly 40% of all chronic pain conditions resolved completely, and about 72% improved. And this is the thing I was going to tell you about. 70% said their chronic stress was improved, and 18% said it was resolved. And the interesting thing is, one of the early programs we did through Chrysler, the people in the program found out 3 days before the end of the program. So before they were doing their post, program surveys, that about 30% of them or 25% of them were getting laid off within the next week. And still there was like 20 something or 30% of people, I don't remember the number right off the top of my head, but that said their chronic stress was resolved. It's like, you've just been told you've got, you're probably going to get laid off, and you're saying, hey, I don't have chronic stress anymore. That was a big
because mental stress is definitely related to physical body tension.
Absolutely. And we found that, as that chronic stress goes down, so does the pain. So we also have people taking fewer pain medications, right? 14% stopped taking pain medications completely. And we also had improvements in diabetes, heart disease, stress, depression, disability, anxiety.
Well, we know that cancer, even diabetes, heart disease, are all inflammatory stress-related responses.
Yes, it's stress either causes illness, or contributes to it, or is aggravated by it, or, it's involved in all of that. There's
I
just
love this. I love this. The vast majority of people with chronic pain aren't like, they don't want to be drug addicts. They just want relief.
right. And, they're not drug seekers, they're relief seekers. So the best way to get people off of opioids and other dangerous medications is to get them relief, right?
Mhm.
And so we teach people, and then like I said, once you learn it, you own it. So you have that for the rest of your life. You learn how to get rid of that stress and how to get rid of that pain.
And this slide I just put up, you've talked about it, right? It's the stress response. Um,
This is from a study that was done by I think the American Psychological Society or American Psychological Association. It was published in the Mayo Clinic, but it was called The Stress of Everything, and it talked about how stress is involved in everything. And it says when stress never seems to go away, health can suffer. The stress response, we talked about that, fight or flight, occurs automatically, and it's necessary and useful. You need it for life, right? But when those stressors go on too long, that fight or flight response goes on too long, and it just stays on, and you're locked into that, and it causes all those problems that we see here, and it causes pain. So we like to say to people, you go to your doctor and you say, oh, my right knee hurts, doc, what's the problem? And he says, well, you're getting older. And you should be thinking, well, wait a minute, how old is my other knee? If my other knee is the same age, why doesn't it hurt the same? And if the answer is, well, then maybe it's not age. Maybe it's what you're doing and how you're moving and how you are responding to the stressors in life.
and I love how you describe, and you didn't say it this time, so I'm going to say it, how somatic functional therapy disrupts the cycle of stress and pain. It is so easy to think about it. And this slide is a visual of that cycle. Can you
Actually,
walk?
go down. I think it's the cycle one is a little bit further down.
Oh, here we go.
There it is. There it is. Yeah, the pain, stress, disease cycle. So what you have is all of these things that kind of feed in together. When you experience stress, what do? You don't see anybody stressed out like this. Oh, I'm so, my muscles are relaxed. No, people are stressed. They're like this, right? Their shoulders are up around their ears and they're tight and their muscles armor, right? So that muscle armoring leads to pain. And we can talk about that now or in the future about how exactly that happens. But it also produces, when your muscles are on, they're burning, right? They're burning energy, they're burning sugar, they're burning oxygen, they're burning all kinds of things. So that burning of oxygen produces oxidative stress. And we know that oxidative stress creates all kinds of damage in the body.
Heart disease,
Yeah,
cancer.
it's actually the underlying theory of aging and disease talks about, hey, it's due to oxidative stress, inflammation, these types of things that underlie everything, right? That's one of the prominent main theories right now about aging and disease. So you can see that all of these things kind of feed into each other. Then you end up so now you've got pain, now you've got these dysfunctional movement patterns, right? You're walking funny because you got a hitch in your get along, as they say, right? And so now you're limping because your back is tight, and then your knee starts to hurt on the other side, and then your ankle hurts, and you get this whole cascade of things that happen. You don't have the energy, you're tired all the time because you're burning all that energy holding your muscles tight. You can't sleep right anymore. One, because you're uncomfortable and you can't get comfortable because your muscles are tight, but also because the stress in your mind and you're thinking about these things. And then you get deconditioned because you don't move enough. And so that leads to poor self-image. Then you have sexual dysfunction. And then you've got this anxiety, this anger, this depression. So all of that keeps feeding into each other. And it's this vicious cycle. So what do? How do we disrupt or break that stress, pain, disease cycle? And
Ta-da!
that's what somatic functional therapy does, is we teach you through this educational therapeutic system, we teach you to retrain your brain so that you can stop pain and resolve these other health conditions that result from those neuropsychophysical responses to the stress.
And the mindful movement, right? Those micro movements, the neurofeedback reboots the brain so that the pain is gone.
Correct, correct. And we see this over and over again. I had given this a similar presentation of these programs at the American Hospital Associate, well, at a conference, and there was a representative from the American Hospital Association there, and they interviewed me and they said, wow, this is amazing. And they ended up picking these programs at Henry Ford Health System as kind of like best practices of hospitals and wellness because of that, because it was outcomes driven. In other words, it had to do with results. What are the results that you're getting? And we were showing that people were getting better. People were resolving pain, resolving stress, resolving chronic illness.
Wow. Well, it's like I have to say that Dr. Alba does not live in South Florida, but she is here visiting me because we are working and curating a conference together for nurses. Everybody, if there's any nurses watching this, go to www.powerupnursing.com. We've been asked to curate a conference to help nurses kind of plug back in and recharge and talk about back pain and chronic pain. Nurses have, it's like their life, right? So I'm helping work on this project with Dr. Alba. So she's here. And we went to visit a friend whose husband, chronic pain is too little of a word to describe what he goes through every single day. And I watched him earlier in the day, and Dr. Rodriguez said, hey, I'll work with you. I'm going to get Dr. Nunez on the phone. And I was out in the kitchen drinking some coffee and watching the misbehavior of my grandkids. And I saw the gentleman come out of his room to go into another room with Dr. Alba to work on a massage table after they had already worked for about a half an hour. And he was moving so quickly, Alba. I've watched him because I go to my friend's house frequently, and I've watched him struggle with a walker moving. He was happy. There was a joy in his movement. And that's what makes me want to make you a hero, right? Because when you see, or for myself, when all of a sudden I don't have to cover my eyes and take a whole bunch of medicine and cry because I have a bad headache. Instead, I can just do kind of micro movements, do the shoulder. We call them the series, right? Ramon and Alba have a series, and Dr. Joe, of exercises for different parts of the body. And while they're designed to alleviate specific pain points, I find that if I do them all, everything feels better.
Yeah, because, and the interesting thing about that was I didn't do anything to him. I talked to him for a little while, and then I taught him. I taught him one of those same movement routines that I taught you, one of those same movement routines that the people in these programs all learned. And that was it. It was like a little 2-minute routine that he learned. And after he did it, he stood up and he says, wow, my right side feels so much more relaxed, because we did a routine for the right side. So that's a nice thing, that unlike exercise, and Tanya, I want to stop you from using the exercise word. That's the bad word. This isn't really exercise at all. We like to think of it as mindful movement, right? We're just teaching you how you can do some very simple, easy movements that allow your brain to regain control of your neuromusculature, right? Your brain regains control of those muscles so that they're not on all the time when they don't have to be, and they can be back in neutral and then you have all the power and all the readiness to go into action without that pain, when you can get everything back to where they're neutral, resting, most relaxed state. And that's all we did. It was a little 2-minute thing that I taught him after just talking for a while. So that's the beauty of it, is unlike exercise, right? Exercise, well, it's almost the new year. So what's everybody going to do? They're going to have their New Year's resolutions. I'm going to exercise every day.
And it makes it worse.
It makes it worse generally, yeah. And if you manage to hold on long enough to actually get better, how long does it take before you're actually any better? A month, 2 months? The beauty of this is that you do it once and you feel better right away. You do it the next time and you feel even better. And after you've been doing it for a little while and you learn how to regain control of the muscles, you own it. You just can do it at any time that you want. And even in a second, you can learn to just let those muscles go without even having to do the movements.
It's funny, I've watched you and with me, because we've traveled now to scientific conferences, and that's happening more and more now that we can travel. But there are times when you come up to me and you say, let's fix that shoulder really quick. And I'm like, well, I don't have time to even do 3 minutes. I'm back up on stage, whatever. And I'm going to share this with people because I always find I should have known this. It's like common sense. She'll grab, I don't know what this is called, your deltoid, and with a thumb and forefinger, she will squeeze it pretty hard until I'm like not uncomfortable, but I can feel it. And then she lets it go. And it's like, oh my God, that feels like 1,000 times better. And I just did it. And so physically it's this grab, and it's like, ow, ow.
And then you do those gentle movements with it, because
Yeah.
all we're doing the only thing I'm doing when I'm grabbing you, Tanya, is I'm just giving your brain a little bit of extra feedback, and I'm just holding those muscles firmly enough so that you notice it. That's all I'm doing. You could that's why you can do it yourself too. If you put your hand on the back of your neck and you move your head back and forth gently while holding it, firmly, like you would hold a kitten, right? Then it just gives your brain a little feedback, and your brain goes, wow, those muscles are tight. They don't need to be tight. Why do they need to be tight? I'm not lifting anything except my head. It just should be relaxed. And it realizes, and it wants economy of movement. It wants economy of effort. So your brain goes, oh, I can let that relax. So that's all we're doing, is we're just giving your brain the feedback it needs to put everything where it's supposed to be, to set things right.
And the body does want to be at rest. It wants to relax, even when it's out doing things in the garden. The muscles, as you taught me, and as I talk to others, they're only meant to contract when you're in danger and when you need to get away from something, or when you get, but somehow we've decided that fitness is and we contraction after contraction, and then we forget to let that all go. And so what we have is a bunch of people leaving the gym that look like they can't walk anymore, and they're in pain, and they go home and say, oh, I had a good workout, I can hardly move, I'm gonna and it's just like it's so I will tell you guys that the way I've gotten addicted to working out, right? It's not exercise, but it's moving my body. The way I belong to Planet Fitness. I will give them kudos till the cows come home. But I go in and I go to the massage chairs first. Now that sounds doesn't sound right. But I lay there and I let all of my muscles melt to total relaxation. And then when I start with my aerobic, I usually do the elliptical for 20 minutes at like a 3 difficulty. It's so much easier. And it's like actually loving it instead of fighting it.
Well, and it makes so much sense, because, like, how are you going to do peak performance, right? How are you going to exercise and do something really well if your muscles are already sitting at 80% at rest instead of being totally relaxed? How much more do you have to go? You can only go an extra 20%. That's why you hear people all the time saying, oh, all I did was bend over and pick up this pencil and I threw my back out, right? What, did that pencil weigh 500 pounds? No, but if your back is already at 95% tightness because you're just running around like that, that little motion of picking up that little pencil off the ground sends it over the edge, right? So what you're doing is something really smart. When you go to the gym, you're getting back down to neutral. So then you can work out and you can get the best benefit without hurting yourself. Same thing, like I was just talking with a director of a nursing program, and they have a lot of problems with nurses getting injured, back pain, things like that. Well, imagine if these nurses are running around with their backs so tight because they're under almost unbearable stress, and then they have to pick somebody up, their chances of getting injured are way higher than if their back was in a nice neutral state. So this is also a preventative thing, that you can learn how to prevent injuries just by getting your muscles into that neutral state and you use them when you need them and you don't have them on all the time. Imagine if you were running your car all the time, super revved up, even when you're going slow, like you got it in, first gear all the time, and then you got it on second gear and third gear. Even when you're just sitting there, your car's not going to run right, right? It's going to get damaged. So the same thing happens to your body.
That is just, I mean, it seems like it should be common sense, but we're not taught about our bodies like that. So it's very, very exciting. Well, I want to make sure I'm going to put the banner back up, that so that people can really have fun with this, can really understand how to use this in your everyday life. If you right now go to www.somaticallyspeaking.com, you can sign up right now for a free webinar. Welcome to Pain Free. You'll get a kind of an interactive and practical hour with the doctors, to understand whether this is something for yourself, for your parents. I mean, I have seen this work with children. Many of you know that I am raising a beautiful, beautiful grandkids, and my oldest at 11 has spectrum and also has oppositional defiance. So his little body is like a linebacker. He is always so stressed. And I find that when he's about ready to flip that switch, that for me before used to engender my anger and rage, that if I just squeeze his forearm enough, that he understands how upset his muscles are. It's not him. His body is giving out all these bad chemicals. He doesn't have to know what they're called. I just call them the bad chemicals. And that if he just goes and relaxes, you can get more control over everything, your mind, your body, your performance. It's all so related. And that's why I'm so proud to be involved with you, Dr. Rodriguez, because it's for kids, it's for elders that are in chronic pain, it's for nurses who can't help us anymore because they're hurting so bad. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the beauty of it. It's for anybody with a brain. And even if that brain's not working great, it still works. You don't have to believe it works. It just does. If you do it, the only people that we've found that it doesn't work for is one group of people. The people that
Those
don't
that
do
don't
it.
do it.
Yeah. Everybody else, and you can be better. Maybe you can't get completely out of pain. Maybe you can, but you can always be better. And we've found that every single person who actually engages gets better. And that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it. And the more you engage, the better you get. And it keeps getting better and better.
Yeah. Well, I have to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Alba. Everybody that I know you have worked with says thank you all the time. And I know that if anybody wants to share this with somebody that is going through a lot of stress, physiological stress, mental stress, emotional stress, um, please go to, you can come back to this Facebook or this LinkedIn and see it, or you can go to Buzzsprout, or you can go to Spotify, or you can go to YouTube and find us on rethinkyourhealth.com or our website, which is www.rethinkyourhealth.com. So great. Well, I hope to see many of you registered for the December 7th webinar at 7 p.m. And I wish everyone watching a friend, a colleague like Alba, who can help really take the pain and stress out of your life as you have done for me, Alba, and that I know you do with all your heart for thousands of other people. So thank you. And we'll see everybody again next week when I have an amazing guest. I hope he's listening. By the name of John Silver, who will be talking about the radical re-envisioning of American healthcare system as not just a right, but a public utility. So until then, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.